PBAL competitor, and welcome to your Power Ranking. I'm your host, Skyrander, and I'm here to judge your team for the Season 6 of the PBAL. Now, before I even go into this, I want to be honest. I'll only judge the team of what I see, not the player. So, keep in mind, and even if I know you're a good player, I'll judge the draft and the draft only, and that should be the basis for what I want to, push forward for my own thinking. That said, a game is always decided by the 6 mods that are brought versus the other 6 mods you face. So even if you have by definition, a good team, you can always be beat by a poor team if you fail to get the team right. And vice versa. Poor team could beat the shit out of a good team. So keep that in mind. I kind of feel I need to define that because I am harsh in some of my judgment and are very, very serene and nice to some of them. And well, if you're a poor player, then it doesn't matter. Anyway, guys, I really hope you guys can take it with a bit of salt and just let's go in with. Yeah, I said stay salty. That's what I want. Anyway, first team, the Hagbones and his Vancouver Kyogres. Now, the team itself is nicely synergized. There are just a flaw with it that just bother me. As you guys can see on the screen, a combination of Latios, Primarina, Heliolisk, Marowak, Golbat are a very, very strong, good combo. Even Excadrill and Sarud are quite nice. If I had to judge it as hard as I can, Regigigas, Machoke, and Golbat, and Weezing, Regigigas, and Machoke rarely, if ever, are going to be actually used in a battle. Which means, the way I see it, the team is limited. It also isn't necessarily all that fast. They are susceptible to actually opposing Pokemon being able to catch on using positive natures of offensive stats, because while we have speedy nature Pokemon in Sarud, Heliolisk, and Latios, the issues I see is that, well, that's the speedy ones. That's the one you want to outspeed. There are no middling speed, and there are very, very slow mods instead, and that mixture always leaves room for opposing teams to abuse that. If you can't outspeed Latios, but you do outspeed Excadrill if you go with Adamant, let's go Adamant. And yeah, all of a sudden, your defensive Pokemon is going to take a lot more defensive hits and be in pressure a lot more easily than it needed to. And like I said, Regigigas and Machoke, for me, they stand out because they aren't very good. I'm sure there were better options for this draft. I am convinced by it. And I like the idea of having Alola, Marowak, and Excadrill as the potential self-rockers, but that's about it. Those are the hazard options, and while there are plenty of defogging going on, and the rapid spin with, of course, Excadrill, I just don't see the synergy being done right. I do actually forget that Weezing gets Toxic Spikes, that's nice. But Golbat is a new Pokemon for this generation, or for the All Armor. Yes, I'm not including Regigigas. And it could be interesting in the draft format. It was really good the previous generation, but as a whole, for me, there are too many holes, defensive abusement to this team, that while they are a good offensive core at first, it does struggle to defensively be able to check things, as it does allow opposing teams to be able to abuse the speeds here. So hence a 3 out of 10. It's harsh, but I miss the middle synergies, and with that, it's just a team that can be easily overwhelmed and abused. And with such a good offensive core, it's a damn shame, really. As our second worst team, it kind of follows the same type of portfolio. And so, I'll be honest, as it is, it's Zach's team with Chicago Beartics are in theory not a bad team, as you have the Urshifu Single Strike, which quite frankly is among the best, if not the best, choice band user in any draft league. Sylveon is good, Nidoking is good, Noivern is quite nice, and Kartana can be rather interesting. For me, there is where it all ends, as there should be no serious team using Auroras without any Hail abuser. We only have Aurora Veil, of course, complexity to it, and in my book, there are superior Aurora Veil setters. Even I'll consider Abomasnow being a superior choice with that. And one thing I see that does bother me, and I really mean bothers me, is there are really no fire switching. So while Volcanion will take some of it, it's just not gonna work. And the same thing goes with Noivern. There are 2 mods that are Noivern for the first time is frail, and Volcanion is not able to shake fire types reliably in this generation due to the mixture of offensive move not pressuring it. Now, Nidoking is nice, and Sylveon is quite fantastic. I even considered the Togetic not to be the worst in the world, but overall, For me, not only is this in theory a slow team with only potentially Cortana standing out with Noivern, it is just so many mods that are a bit on the slow side. And while Sticky Web could be an aspect with Vikavolt, I just don't see the synergies working that well for me. I just don't. It's so close of being good. You just switch out a few Pokemon and you kind of see it could potentially work, but as a whole, it just kind of struggles. And you know, the worst part about it is that the team is in theory somewhat weak to Poison too, with only like Cortana, which definitely aren't a defensive mon, and Aurora's been able to soak them well, and to an extent Configuricus, but overall it just struggles. And I'll know I said it before that, you know, I only base a team on what I see, and if Chicago Beartix can turn this around, it's going to be by good plays and not the draft itself. If I had to change something, I definitely say put up the speeds are a bit stronger. I'll probably consider actually dropping Togetic for something speedier, as there are just so many mixtures here that just make this team kind of struggle. I'll even just have this said, the Bolt Beam aspect of this team is quite hard. It's hard to switch into that, and a well-placed Bolt Beam team will push this Pokemon down, or this team down. So I think there are good things going here, but I see the glaring aspects that are a slower speeds here together with potentially struggling options of actually getting Hasses out of the field. While we have 4 defoggers, it still is one of those things that all of them in some way do struggle to Hassed naturally, so it's forced to run certain items to be able to negate that. Like I said, a well-played team on this will work well, but as a team, I see issues that I just can't negate. And for a Pokemon such as Single Strike Urshifu, you need a lot more pressurement and even some better pilot option if I had to put it into this aspect. But overall, I want to see this team in action because I see synergies here that can work well. I just don't know whether or not I appreciate what I see as a whole. At 14th team, this is, I'll say from here on out, there are a couple of teams here in the same radio, and the reason they are going to be judged rather hard is because they have, I will say, good synergies that aren't abused, and I can't for the life of me understand why they aren't. So Big Time Brownie and his Green Bay Jumpers, which by the way is probably one of the best team names out there. I'll just have it said, his Urshifu Pelipper combo is nice to get with Tornadoes Incarnate, and you kind of see the really strong, well, offensive rain team that is actually being created here. Now we follow up with Drapion, Electivire, and Beartic, which is a great rain abuser if done right. Followed up with a good defensive core, or offensive, when I want to see it, with Aegislash, Kamao, Confei, and Claydool. So what are my issues with this team? Well, there are no main abuser for the rain. I don't see a Kabutops, I don't see a Dreadnought. Hell, I don't even see Kingdra. You got the best rain setter in the game, you got Urshifu, the Rapid Strike variant, which is phenomenal on the rain, yet we don't see the breakers of the team. The breakers are inborn with basically Kamao or Aegislash be able to perform that role. Confei works in this environment, I like the idea. Claydool, it's passable at best, good combination of Stealth Rocks and Rapid Spin, and could do its thing. They got 2 defoggers in Tornadoes and Pelipper, which neither want to run their role reliably. One thing that also was kind of bothersome is when it comes to Stealth Rocks, we only got Kamao and Claydool. And another thing that kind of realized now watching that they really pushed it worse, or they pushed it a bit higher of the lowest one between these 5 scores teams, was that I don't see a rock type. The reason I want to mention the rock type is because while a rain team in all essence are, well, good offensively, a rock type do negate you to be pressured by fire types that can pressure a team such as this, such as Rotom Wash, Heat, that absolutely does allow this team to kind of fall down. Kamao is a switch in there, and that's it. And that's not I don't like it. I see the struggles, and I miss that water wall breaker. I think if we only had something like Kabutops, I'll easily raise his team a lot higher. But not having the breaker and having that inborn to Beartic, I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed with that option. And even so, Electivire, while being good, there are better electric types that can do stronger damage. I can't understand the reasoning of taking Electivire when you have the option of Thunder and especially offensive Pokemon that absolutely break teams apart. For example, a regular Raichu is a phenomenal aspect in this environment because of that option. Even a Alolan one at that. And I don't get it. There are good things going on here, yet we missed two key aspects that would change this team phenomenally. So, to Big Time Brownie, I'll absolutely say this. The team is good, but you're missing key aspect to really make this strong as hell. Consider these changes, I beg of you. Så with that said, Sviton, Mani, jag ska säga min svenske vän. Vad hände? What happened here? For example, Uppsala Umbreons and Sventon Sven is... This team is awesome. I love this team. There are so many good things going on. And then the wrap-up is horrible. You see a team with Celesteela and Buzzwole. What did they do? They cover each other's worst aspects except fire. So you've realized that they have something like Heatran and you realize, nice, it covers that. But that means that, well... That's the core. That's it. That's all of it. I don't see a proper Fairy. Clefairy? No! Celebi is picked here as a second tier 2. What happened? Zygarde. While a good ground type, it's not necessarily defensive. You're leaving that role to Buzzwole. And Sharpedo, while a good water and dog type, it is not. I was gonna say a good defensive aspect. It's basically there's a sweeper. Trampa is now forced to roll, which as a default is quite okay to get with roll jump, but it's forced to cover what a regular stereotypical water type is supposed to do. And I just don't get it. I haven't really mentioned Garbodor, but Garbodor is good. I like that. Basically, the team is good. Celesteela, Heatran, Buzzwole, Garbodor are good assets to any team because they're flexible and has plenty of different move styles. But much like the previous team, I miss something to cover the woods. You guys look at this team and what are you thinking? What is the switching to a fire type? We only got Heatran and most fire type got Scorching Sand this generation, which means Heatran, while being a switch-in, it is not a reliable one. You need more to cover this. And and Zygarde, of course, a bit on the frailer side, will not be a switching. Clefairy is not necessarily. It is a wish passer. It can soak some hit, but it's also a setup fodder. A Rotom, which I can get behind, is quite nice. I never put a team with a Celesteela this low ever before. 13 with a good core should be a lot higher, but missing on the Fairy, having a proper steel type that actually covers what Celesteela struggles with. But you realize that there are room for improvements, and I realize that sound very cheeky, but for me, a team like this needs a lot more support. And I think the offensive aspect and even the defensive responses are there, but the defensive responses for the defensive responses aren't there. Zygarde will not cover the work for Celesteela, nor will Buzzwole be covered by any rock type because there is none. And it just it's so close of being good, yet like for me, I think had Clefairy been, for example, a Yanshi or Carbink, it would have been Fairy be better, though I highly regard Yanshi as the Carbink should never be considered ever. But that would have definitely raised this team a little bit more higher at least. And same with Sharpedo. I like Sharpedo. I think it's a good Pokemon, but not for this passive team. You're actually allowing Zygarde together with Sharpedo to be your offensive main attackers, and they are frail as hell and don't cover each other's weaknesses all that well. So it's basically about pick your poison. That said, the things that are good here are really good. I don't want to repeat myself all too much, but if I had to say one thing, I want to see a 100 stealth rocker, and I want to see actually better hazard removal tools. Trampa and Rotom are rather frail, do not necessarily shake the things that set up rocks, and while Clefairy could cover that role, I think there are superior picks to Clefairy's role. So I really hope we see something like that in the future, and even if, like I said before, a team such as Sven, he's a phenomenal player, and I'm sure with the tools he has, he will do well, but the draft for me just kind of on a shaky side. By the way, Selby gets Stealth Rock, so it's not terrible. But 5.5, it's definitely, I say 5 is what I consider good, but definitely not above that. For me, it's rather average, and I see issues here that I think can be abused. Then we follow that up with, I'm gonna butcher this name, but Malamar Smalls and DeVito's Ditto. Now, this is a team I actually liked. I think at first I ranked it a bit higher, but then I started to get into the meat of it, and I realized there are a few things here that stands out that I think will hurt this team in the long run. Now, Dragonite, Articuno, the Galeria Form, Whimsicott, Cybertron, Magmortar, Odino. I think those 5 are awesome, and there are really nothing to it. Then we got Lucario, which, it's a shaky pick at pick, but I like it. Melodic, which I think is good, if done right. Morpeko, which, oof. I think it's okay rapid spinner at best. Don't see Morpeko that often because it is limited. And Ditto, which I never say should be considered for a team unless you are weak to something big. And I believe the defensive responses are put in place. So I don't get why we have a Ditto here. There are, in my book, options for better aspects here, because Odino is a good wish passer and should clear up whatever issues there is. That said, pick Ditto with your own merits, and it limits the complexity, and you're basing Ditto to be a part, or basically hoping that your team are using something you can abuse against them. I'm not totally against it, but I think it's just a shaky option as a whole. That said though, Dragonite is awesome, great defogger this generation, but multi-scaling can keep intact and it can fill up both the offensive and defensive role. Articuno is quite right. If I'm gonna say the thing that stands out to me and the reason I decided to lower it is because, you know, Freeze Dry? Yeah, about that. So we have Magmortar and Lucario that are switching to Freeze Dry. So any team with Freeze Dry is gonna eat this team alive with ease. I'm sorry to say, but that's it. There are just no real switch into that because we don't have a proper ice type or anything like that. And Whimsicott, while I do like it, I don't see the Pokemon that can abuse Whimsicott's assets. Yes, it has Defog, and yes, it's actually a good Fairy and Grass type, but Whimsicott for me is a Pirate Pokemon that can fill a role, like I said, Defog, but also Tailwind. And there are no mons here that can abuse Tailwind efficiently and keep that going. There are no key breakers, and while Dragonite can fill that role, I want to say that it want to be more complex. So, if I had to say something about this team that I think is problematic, it lacks proper breakers. And the ones that are breakers, which is Lucario and Magmortar, they most likely don't need the support from any of the other guys naturally. And the private options aren't necessarily all that good either, while Articuno can U-turn, and so can Morpeko with Potting Shot and U-turn and even Volt Switch, I believe. And Whimsicott can do the same. It's just, it's not necessarily there. I like the defensive option, I like the defensive core, but if I had to say, if I change something, well, first and foremost, Lucario is not necessarily the best Fairy switching. And I think you guys see the same here. The Magmortar is the only real switch into that. The rest takes neutral or super effective damage. So if I were him, I'd drop Melodic and get something that sold that role and get a proper poison type. Even Morpeko is kind of risk there. But while it does work as a defogger or rapid spinner, I think Whimsicott covers that role. And I'll drop Ditto, man. Devious Ditto, get that Ditto out and get something building here. Get the synergies you need. Because quite frankly, I think Dragonite needs all the support it can get, and you need, if not a proper Fairy, at least a proper Steel type. Because as of right now, I can see any Specs Gardevoir breaking this team in half. And even like a rapid rock, look at this rock polish variant of Diancie will pressure this team quite naturally. It only has Seismitoad switch in there, I think. And yeah, it's just there are so many things to abuse. And well, not so many things. There are things that is abusable for this team, and it bothers me. But overall, the synergies are right. It just, I think Ditto and Melodic should definitely be gone for something stronger or something more that builds upon the roles of the other Pokemon, because offensive core is great, and even the defensive aspect of those offensive mons works well. So yeah, it's one of those weird things. Like, I like it, but I want to see more. And also only one stealth rocker, oof, that can be dangerous. But as a whole, I like the team. Just it could have been a bit better. It really could have been just a little bit better. That's why R12 at 6.10 points, or 6 point out of 10, 6.10. What am I talking about? Next one, Root. I know you're a good player, and I see very good things here. And the reason you aren't higher is because of the issues I see that are hard to follow up upon. Because in my book, I see all the synergies I like, but I also see the things that could struggle with it. So a combination here of Hydreigon, Slowbro, Chandelo, Nidoqueen, and Tauros is great. Cobbink, I should never recommend for any team, yet we see it. And then we have a combination of Skarmory, which by the way is awesome. Circuitry, which I don't know how good it is this generation. Seal Valley, I like it, but I just don't. It's hard to define it. It's a good defogger. And Lurantis, which is a very, very passive grass type that can be offensive and defensive. Damn, I struggle with that. And actually, Lurantis and Slowbro works very well together. Slowbro has a potential Trick Room Cedric together with Teleport. It's a great leadway for your Lurantis. But why do I keep this team so low? It's not because of the mods themselves, it's rather the speeds here they represent. This is a slow team, or not a slow team, but it's definitely not on the fastest side. There are a lot of mons locked to a rather shaky speed here that could be abused against it. Tauros, by the way, is a good Pokemon at 1 or 10 speed. I like that aspect, but besides that, like then we have Hydreigon and Seal Valley at 90 speed, and then we got Chandelo, Nidoqueen, and Circuitry in the 80s-ish. And then it goes really low at, Slowbro, Cobbink, Lurantis, definitely in the 40s and below. And for me, that's troublesome, because that means that any 120 base speed Pokemon will be able to go to positive nature and break this team. This team could be forced to run, or will be forced to run Scoffed at times. And it can be abused with Trick Room, and I like that aspect about Cobbink. But overall, I see the struggles and it bothers me. I don't think the team is bad, I just think missing key speed tiers will force Root to play more defensive than he needs to, and considering how offensive and naturally strong he is a player, I think there are struggles here that he haven't foreseen, or rather he tried probably to patch them too late. And as a whole, it just And the thing is, I like the course. Like I said, there are really nothing wrong with the course. If I had to say maybe something, I'd say maybe missing a poison type, or it can be abused with a well-placed grass, or bug team could pressure this team naturally. But there aren't that many bugs that does that. I think they're only like Arachnid and Golisopod that does kind of get into this team and get some meat out of it. But that's about it. Like, the core here is good. It's not flawless, but it's good. And that's why I'm not ranked higher, because I wanted a bit more speed. But overall, the synergies are right. So when you're fending off against this team, if you have the speed here to abuse it, do it. But if you don't, trust me, you're gonna struggle because of Root himself. Then we followed up with Jetman and the Australian Arcanines. Now, you figured with this synergy and these mons that I would rank it higher, and I'll be honest, based on the 6 mons I mentioned first here, it's absolutely the best team in the whole goddamn. it is by far the best synergies I've seen that could be a very, very hard abuse. The reason it's low is because the remaining mon isn't that key. We got Coco, Regieleki, Zarina, Glacier, Arachnid, and Crocodile. Phenomenal mons. There are a synergy here that pressure naturally any matchup they will be forced to be fending off against. The reason it's low: Gothitelle, Flareon, Noctowl, and Draglock. I don't think Noctowl is a bad Pokemon, I just don't see the reason to use it here. And Flareon, I don't think it's a bad fire type, I just don't see a reason to use it. Draglock, there's no reason to use it. And Gothitelle, now, with Arena Trap it can be good, but it does force our opponent, or our player here, to be somewhat defensive and passive, and considering he has the option of never ever be able to be that, I just don't get why. Why is it there? You can set up Trick Room for Glacier, and that's gonna be something to really be scared about, but that's about it. And the other aspect is I don't see too many offensive mons that does allow ground types to stop them. He has one of those ground types that does pressure the Coco-Licky combination, but if I had to say something that does kind of bothers me, it is that Serena is gonna cover a lot of ground, because Arachbanid, while good, lacks recovery and doesn't necessarily like to switch in and out. It will never be the hyper response for ground types. Serena will cover the most of that role. Glacier can do it to an extent, but Glacier wanna be healthy to break teams. So if I had to say something that I think would be helpful, it is getting something that could complement the Coco-Licky combination, because it's a good combination. It's a very tough one to break, but the things that breaks it aren't covered naturally in this team, at least in my book, not enough. There needs to be better options to really break or make that work. Hell, I'll even consider, and I'm just gonna say this once, get something that can trick a ring target to allow Licky to attack freely. Get a awful Coco, like Rotom. For me, in my book, drop Noctowl for Rotom Fan or anything like that. Just get that natural aspect, because I think it's that's done right. There's gonna be problematic teams here, because as of right now, if I had something like a Rhydon or a Rhyperior, I naturally pressure this team quite naturally, and it has to do with a combination and combination alone. And I think it's not something it struggles with, but it's something it's missing out on. That's why I rank it lower, because I think the lower tier Pokemon here are not going to complement the offensive core of the team, and if they're ever chosen, they're going to be chosen out of necessity, not out of offensive aspects or defensive at that. It's just going to be a coverage, and you hate to see it in a team with this high caliber Pokemon, because this could have been among the best teams had not the lower tier pick be so poorly implemented for the offensive core of this team. So, Jetman, I think this team is good. It missed Core's aspect that I think would have made this team slightly better, and that's why we ranked 10 here with a 6.5. We're gonna follow the route of a 6.5. As I said, there are a lot of mons in the 5 to 6, and it's because the missing core things that would push it above what I want to see. Then we got Flame Horizon and his Minnesota Lycan Rocks. Now, I never put a team with a Lando this low before, or even a Rotom Heat. Rotom Heat is, by the way, one of the best Pokemon in the game. Even the combination here, I like Landorus, like Rotom, like Porygon 2, like Acelf, like Excelgor, Druddigon. What I don't like is Grimmsnarl, which never to rarely does well in a league aspect. Unfortunately, Aggron, I have a hard time ever defining why to use Aggron. I don't believe it's a good defensive steel type. And as they cover the rock too, all of a sudden you have a switch in for one key thing and they don't cover each other's weaknesses. Trevenant can be good in Trick Room team, but this is not a Trick Room team, even with Porygon 2 in mind. And yeah, it's that thing. It has good things going, but the things that struggles, it will struggle a lot. But basically, I don't see too many bad things. I think the speedster is among the best in the draft. We have Excelgor, which is speedy, Acelf is speedy, Lando is speedy-ish, and Rotom is speedy-ish, Tentacruel is speedy-ish. Then we got a lower tier with Trevenant, Porygon 2, Druddigon, Aggron, and Grimmsnarl. So its lowest speediest Pokemon, I think, is around its base 50, or is it 40 with Aggron? I mean, that's the slowest mon, followed by Porygon, Druddigon, Grimmsnarl. Yeah, I mean, it's not a slow team. It's a team that definitely have the accessibility of abusing offensive cores, and it has a good defense option: Landorus, Rotom, and Rapid Spin with Tentacruel, and even set up passes. Lando solves that, Aggron solves that, Druddigon solves that, Tentacruel solves Toxic Spike, and Acelf solves Stealth Rock. There are a lot of key things that's going on here. For me, it's the defensive switch-ins that kind of struggles, and I don't think there's a real way of solving it without breaking up things. Because for me, Aggron probably is the one that's gotta go for a proper steel type in my book, and just lose out on the rock type completely, as you know, the switch-ins to fire are here. Druddigon, Tentacruel, and Rotom will solve that plenty. But overall, it's one of those things. It's a good team that just doesn't break the boundaries of what I want to see. It has a lot to do with the poor defensive aspect against certain types, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just think it struggles versus the wrong things. And one thing I think is great with this team that I really want to mention is the response to Earthquake. While Aggron is awfully weak to Earthquake, Landorus, Roltrom, and Azelf, they all three solve that, and they will be key Pokemon for this team. If I had to say it, I'd probably say that the only reason I don't necessarily like this team a lot or more than I want to is because of the lower tier picks, while good, are not phenomenal. I think Lando, Roltrom, Tentacruel, Azelf, Porygon 2 are great, and even Excel goes to an extent. I just don't like Grimmsnarl, I don't like Aggron. Trevenant, I think it can work, and I think Flame is gonna show us how. And Druddigon can be good, but it will be forced to run a defensive role for this team probably most of the time. And if somebody can abuse that, somebody will. And well, another thing I guess which is worth mentioning is that this team is not supported Lando all that much. It forces Lando to be either Rocker or Stealth Rocker. It's not probably rarely going to be run as an offensive Pokemon with the synergies. Yeah, I think if it does it right, it's going to work. And I think the one thing I have to keep in mind is that screening is always a thing. And Grimmsnarl covers that. And while I am being overly against Grimmsnarl, I think if it's done right, this team can be very, very good. But at 6.5, almost put it at the 7. Like I said, the things that are bad here aren't necessarily all that bad. It's just a more of a personal preference of what I am looking for, and it's not as complete as I wanted it to be. But it doesn't mean it's bad, because it has very, very dangerous thing going on. It probably should have been a 7 now that I have it in front of me. Sorry about that, Flame. At 7 points. By the way, I wasn't really leveling, if I should have put it. Sajin Salamanders and his I have no idea. Sully Souls? Samoroths? I'm sorry, but definitely that took the logo takes a bit out of that. Anyway, this team I like. I think there are very few flaws with it. Victini, Ninetales, Flygon, Venusaur, Jolteon, Sableye, Tapu Fini, Cobalion, Armaldo, and Torkoal. If I had to say something, fire switchings. Where are they? I know we're gonna say Fini, but in a world where we have Salazzle, it's a hard bargain. No, but really, it's a good team. I like this team quite a lot. It's a proper Sun team. We have Sunny Day with, of course, or Drought with Torkoal. We have Victini as probably one of the best fire abusers in the game, together with Venusaur, that absolutely can make teams struggles. I mean, there aren't really that many wrong things with this team. I like this synergy, and if I had to say something that I think is its only real flaw, it is the combination of Sableye and Armaldo, I think, or even Jolteon, because Jolteon want to be in Hail teams or Rain team because of a Wither Ball. It can use it, and it's gonna break some fire types, I'm sure, with Wither Ball, but Jolteon is always a tough sell for me. But for me, Sableye, it's passive for a team that are built to be offensive. I don't necessarily see the reason to burn turns of Sun when you can try to abuse it. For me, something like Spiritomb or something like Memento and break free of anybody would always be good. And Armaldo, I just don't get. A proper Sun team has a collective fire type to be able to soak hits and retaliate. Something like Regirock would have been phenomenal here. And I guess one could say that, well, the Rapid Spin aspect is a thing, and you always want to consider that, but Flygon, Tapu Fini, Solstice roll just fine. I'll just say it as it is, like, Armaldo's gotta go. If Armaldo is gone and a proper rock type is there, you know what you got? Probably top 3 teams here. That's the only flaw I see, Sableye and Armaldo, but they do weigh down the team, because basically, if say you want to run defensive, it's bound to always be Fini. Fini and Sableye are the only defensive responses naturally. And by the way, I realized that I've forgotten that Jolteon and Alola Knight. I take that back. You know what? Fuck it. This should be... No. 8. I don't know which rank you are, really, but I forgot that... fuck it, Jolteon works here. But get rid of Sableye and Armaldo. Rank, I don't know. Let's put... 3-ish. There you go. Something like that. This is probably one of the dumbest things I've done. I should have ranked this team higher. I'm sorry. Sadian, you are absolutely not 8, but you're definitely higher. I'll put you together with the other one that are 3, so you're a draw. There you go. Yeah, this worked. Fuck. Sorry. Anyway, I think this team is good. That's about it. That's all I have to say. I'm sorry to get really tired. This recording getting longer than I want to. At number 7, Max Rapture. You know what? You should have been 10 because of Southland. That's all I'm gonna say. But the thing that bothers me with this team are actually not that glaring at first. A combination of Latios, Toxapex, Porygon 2, Heracross is great. Steelix is a fair steel type. Clefairy is a phenomenal fairy, and Tangrowth are, all things considered, a good grass type. It is the Alolan Persian I just don't get, and the Hippopotas. For me, like, if you aren't getting proper sand setters, there is no point of getting sand, and even more so with Southland. Southland is, while I love it, it is a hard sell this generation, and I mean, it's a fair normal type, I guess, and can run a defensive role. But for me, I never see Hippopotas nor Southland ever being used. I don't even regard them a part of the team until Max Rapture, of course, proved me otherwise with hits Tasmanian and Toxicroaks. And the other aspect is, of course, it is on the slower side. I hate to say it, there are good teams that have a slow aspect, and Pex and Tangrowth are a phenomenal combination, and they are sold well with Latias. But even Clefable is good. Like, the defensive core is there, and the breakers in both Heracross and Porygon 2 or C are great. It is just, it can and will be abused. It has Pokemon that are setup fodder, there are Pokemon that are a bit too slow to break apart teams that are slightly faster, and I just see this team struggles against the wrong things. It has the defensive responses, absolutely, but it doesn't have the defensive responses that can turn around momentum. One can say Clefable can solve that role, and I say at times depending on the matchup. Latios, however, or Latias, is one I look forward to see done right, and I think Max Rapture has the capacity of doing that right. And Steelix is always good. I really like this team. For me, it's just, the things it does that struggles are just the proper turnabouts. And the same thing is with kind of pivot thing, because I only believe the only pivot Pokemon it has is Persian, so every other switch-in are stagnated to stay in. For me, that's an issue. And Stealth Rockers are, of course, involved with Steelix. I don't consider Hippopotas as that response. And the same thing with hazard removals. I only think, what is that? Latias is going to be sold to that role. The other actually can't do it. So if you don't want to be abused about hazards, it means his Latias is going to be a defensive role. And while it does that really well, it did get so much things this generation to be offensively active. So if I had to make a change, I'd say kick Hippo and Southland and get a proper hazard removal and maybe one more Stealth Rocker, and I think you are in the spot for being one of the better teams in this. Because defensive course here, there's nothing wrong with that, and I think that's the issue. That there are so many good responses, and then just the backbone responses aren't necessarily as key as the offensive ones are. And or rather, the offensive responses are as good as the defensive ones. It's the opposite. There are always a good switch in, but never a good switch in to force out switches. So yeah, it's not the worst team by any chance. Like, for me, like 1-2 trades here for a more defensive turnabouts, and I think this is one of the better teams in this. Follow that up with Aaron, runner of the league, at number 6. Now this was tough, because there are good aspects about this team, and there are 2 bad ones. Actually, I can only find 2 bad ones, but I think they're bad enough that I consider it not key. First and foremost, Dracovic, Raikou, Roserade, Darmanitan, Corviknight, Slurpuff, and Hippo. Awesome. They are good Pokemons. They're like, there's a combination here that I really love. And then we have BHM, which it's passable for a psychic type sometimes, maybe. But for this team, no, it's very forgettable. Will rarely to never be used. Scrafty, it is probably drafted out of necessity of a defensive response, but I don't think it covers the defensive responses it wants to take. And then we got Wishy-Washy, which, Aaron, just drop it. Just get rid of it. There are no reason to getting that Pokemon whatsoever. Because if I had to say something, it is that we need something, or this team needs something to kind of buff its speed. For me, I'm lacking something that could potentially tailwind, or something that just like you remember the team that had a Whimsicott? This team needed a Whimsicott, and it also needs a Sand Abuser. You got a proper Sand Setter without anything to abuse it with. Sand Slash probably would never be considered, but my god, just anything. And that's about it. Like, there are good things going about this game I really like, but for me, a Tailwind aspect together with Darmanitan, Raikou, and Dracovish to abuse their pure power, yeah, please. But as a whole, I don't think the team is bad. I think it's among the worst, or I mean, I'm getting tired, among the best, because the defensive responses, with Corviknight, Slurpuff is a passable fairy at times, and Dracovish breaks team apart if it gets moved freely. Yeah, there are things here I really like, and Roserade is actually a phenomenal sitter. Corviknight is one of the best defogging in the game. I don't believe, if you have a Corviknight, you don't need to consider any other type of defogging. Maybe getting more of Hazard Setter. I believe Hippo is solving that one right now alone, together with Sticky Web, maybe on Slurpuff at times. And of course, not Roserade kind of covers it, but I would have liked another Stealth Rocker, and I would have liked a Sand Abuser. Which one to solve it? I don't know. Well, actually, another thing. It seems to be a very common thing here, but there are a lot of teams here that consider never to draft a rock type, which means they are in theory weak to fire. And while Dracovish can take some of it, it is never supposed to be a switch into fire. Darmanitan is definitely not a response to that, and Wishiwashi I don't even consider a Pokemon. So proper rock type together with sand would be probably the best. I'll just have it mentioned, level with it. There are very few flaws with the team, but the ones I see are something that Aaron needs to take a stand on each time he draft or actually brings the team. But it is so close to perfection. It's just BHM's crafting Wishiwashi makes this team limited by actually being forced to run the other 7 most of the time. And I just don't know. It is good, but it's not perfect. Then we follow up with Playmaker and 5th spot at the same spot or at the same point as Aaron. For actually the same reasons. There are some glaring issues, but there are perfections involved here. First and foremost, the team has a Garchomp, and that always makes it a top 10 Pokemon or top 10 draft. Here's a top 5 instead, which I think is passable. Togekiss, good fairy combination with Garchomp. They are sharing ice issues. So what do you solve to make ice less susceptible? Well, we got a Magnezone, which by the way is good, but actually I was Slowking too, I'm sorry. Then with Blissey, Hitmontop, Tangela, Cinderace, Moltres, the Galarian Form, Haunter, and Magnezone. Now, first and foremost, the Pokemon that are good here are really good. Garchomp, Togekiss, Slowking, Blissey, Cinderace, and Magnezone are great. Hitmontop is passable. Galarian Moltres, I don't see a reason to ever use it over anything else at the moment. It's just not that key anymore. Tangela is a very I don't know. It works, but it's not perfect. And same with Haunter. It's a Scarfer. It's never Eviolite and sub-disable and whatnot. But Haunter, for me, is not that very flexible of a Pokemon. And another aspect is that I know already by the default here that Garchomp will never be a Stealth Rocker. Blissey will solve that role. And the finding switch-ins aren't necessarily all that well-rounded. We forced in Slowking to run both Finding Resist and Ice Resist, and that's never fun to be forced to deal with. Yes, you consider the Togekiss to be a Finding switch-in, and I'll agree to an extent, but consider the changes made to the meta means the most Finding type deals with Kiss rather easily too. Togekiss has a few things going for it. The Scarf set is phenomenal and works well in synergy with this type of team. And Cinderace for this generation, without a Libero, just Blaze, are overall very well rounded. I really like this thing. The reason I rank it so high is because there are synergies here that works, that are great. And if I had to fix something, I probably lean into something like with Togekiss and Cinderace, do you need Hitmontop? Or can you get a proper Finding type? Same with Tangela. I think it's good in some environments, but it's limited. I'll even consider something like Elder Gods to be a better option because of defogging, because it does open up the team up a little bit to be flexible, plus it allows some type of U-turning plus regenerator. If you want to have something like Tangela, more passive defensive grass, there are others that do similar role a bit better. And as far as Moltres go, try it. And Magnezone, like the team itself is not necessarily weak to other steel types all that much, but having Magnezone to be able to get rid of something like Celesteela would be really good for Togekiss. So overall, I think it's a good team. I have a hard time saying something really bad about it, but the things I mentioned, such as of course Tangela and Hitmontop being exchanged, yeah, I think so. I think they're a better option. I really hope you consider a Playmaker, because this is a very good team. And Atlanta Victory Stars, you're probably going to be, in my book at least, among the top 5 or top 4 players because of this synergy, because it does allow some flexibility to your team. At number 4, we have the Goldaga Dragons and the New York Empoleons. Now, I'll be honest, the reason it's not higher is because of 2 mons, and the rest I just say, fucking shit, this is gonna be a tough team to deal with. And we have Dragapult, Nihilego, Obstagoon, Swampert, we got the freaking Rillaboom, Gardevoir, Talonflame, and Durant. Phenomenal mons. Phenomenal mons. Girder, I don't think is terrible. It has defog, so it has things here that really goes its way, but I wouldn't say it complements the team all that much. And then we got Emolga, which, while I personally love Emolga because it got Energy Ball and is really dumb, it is not a great Pokemon for this team. And I hate to say it, but why? Why did you take that route? There is one thing that just really struggle and makes me not like this team, and that is the ice switch-ins. Where are they? Durant is not gonna be it. Swampert isn't it. And Rillaboom is not a good synergy with Swampert, because Swampert is now forced never run Earthquake if Rillaboom is involved. That is not a good thing to have. And it makes me a bit sad actually, because there are so many good things going on here. I'll say, if it's possible, get out of Emolga and get something that could abuse, like Unburden, whatever. Something that can capitalize on Grassy Seed. And maybe, I just don't know, like, I want to figure out the ice weakness. Can we get a water type that can cover that? I just don't know. I'm looking at this team and I'm just like, that's gonna be a thing. Same thing with kind of Fairy. I mean, Nihilego and Talonflame is gonna be the main soakers of that, but I would very much want to see a Poison type to be able to kind of cover the wuss. But it's a hard sell, because the monsters are good here, are really good, and kind of hard to exchange. So I think it's a good synergy. I think Rillaboom is something that could abuse its terrain, and I think Swampert are limited by Rillaboom. But one thing I see that's going to be phenomenal with this team is Tailwind and Obstagoon. I think, that's going to be rough to deal with. Obstagoon is very much forgotten, but there are very few to no switch into that Pokemon. If it's Tailwind supported, well, good luck with that. And of course Dragapult, just top 3 Pokemon in draft format because of its speeds here. And as far as I'm aware, there are a couple of teams here that will not be able to outspeed a Modest or Adamant Dragapult, which means that Goldeo has a very strong chance of abuse situation that he never drafted for, but God. And Swampert, of course, with Flip Turn are better than ever this generation. So overall, this is definitely one of the best teams in the draft, and the things it lacks are nitpicks, but something I see as something to abuse against it. But overall, this is one of the better teams, and there will be struggles to this. At number 3, though shared with the Sun Guy, I'm just gonna say it now, I mean, it has to be. But Choice Specs and his Orlando Magikarps. Now, I know the Choice Specs already, he is one of the best players I know. But that's not why I rank it so high. The reason I rank it so high is because the synergies are here. It is a very good constructed team with very few flaws. And that's something you guys have to deal with. First and foremost, we got Zeraora, Arcanine, Metagross, Crobat, Palossand, Caracosta, Tapu Bulu, Hexerus, the Psychic, what's it called? Never mind, the Psychic Bug guy and Rotom Frost. Why can't I remember? Orbeetle. There we go. So, what's the flaws of the team? I mean, it really isn't any. Like, if I really had to put a nail on it, I'll probably say that there are 2 months here that's always going to be running defog, that I see it, and it's something that bothers me when you have something like Stick Web and Stealth Rock on your team. You want to have a Rapid Spinner, and that's something that Choice Specs is going to keep in mind. But Crobat and Rotom is always going to be the defogger of the team. The team itself is not necessarily all that weak to rocks, and I think that's a strength with the team. And the fighting weaknesses aren't in the plenty, and or there are plenty-ish, but there are switch-ins here for it. And it's all accounted for. For me, this is a very, very complete team. The only reason I actually picked it a bit below is, yet again, for speed tiers. You'd be surprised here, with a team being somewhat speedy with both Crobat and Zeraora, the reason it's not the higher one is because it is in the middling speeds. We have a lot of Pokemon in the same speed tier. Arcanine, Metagross, Tapu Bulu, Orbeetle, Haxorus, and Rotom Frost are in the same type of speed tier, and Caracosta and Palossand being in the lower ones. Which in theory means that if you have a base 70 mon that are below these speed tiers, you're probably going to run that offensively instead of actually defensively, or rather go for Adamant over something like Timber or Jolly. And you can abuse that, and even of course at 110 speed, you're probably going to just capitalize on getting more bulk involved with you. Basically, I miss a mon that is in the 100 speed tier, or at least I'd say 105. I think that would have helped this team a little bit. And another thing I realized that when I was looking at the 3 remaining teams, which one are better between these, it is actually the dark switch-ins. If somebody can spam dark moves, Tapu Bulu is the only real response to that. Now, dark moves are tough as follows already, and same thing with ghost moves. But with this team, it looks to be a tough sell. So the team is missing, in theory, a dark type to be able to soak hits, and there aren't that many of that. And it's something that Choice Specs is going to take a stand on, but his team building has always proven to be very, very successful. So I'm not worried, but it's something that does push it up above the other two, because it's a defensive aspect that he has to keep in mind and force to switch in and do right. But overall, very, very strong draft, and I mean, there are just no real flaws with it. But the other twos are just better in my book. At number 2, we have Absolute and his Dragonairs. I can't read, unfortunately, the last one of that. So I'm real sorry, Absolute, if I'm butchering that. But I'm gonna give you all the credit in the team you have, because this is just a very, 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 very good team. A team I see as one of the better ones overall, because not of the individual Pokemon, but the synergies built here are strong and very, very good. We have Lele, we have Mamoswine, we have Vaporeon, Rotom, Registeel, which got bought first generation, Dusclops, Salamence, Alolan, Sandslash, Vanillux, and Salazzle. So, the reason why it's not number 1. Well, I'll be honest, while I like the team, there are some flaws with it. And the some flaws is, it's not, in my book, speedy enough. It doesn't have the lead spear outside of Salazzle, but you have Lele to negate anything that could be thrown at you. And we got one of the strongest Steel, Fairy, and Dragon cores in Lele, Registeel, and Salamence. That's just a combination that's just gonna work. And the biggest weakness for Salamence are something like Mamoswine. So he got Mamoswine. And all of a sudden he has one of the strongest ice types in combination with Vanillux and Alolan Sandslash, which, by the way, both can set up Veils to defensively check anything. He has 2 phenomenal Stealth Rockers in both Mamoswine and Registeel. We got a Wish Passion and Vaporeon to cover anything the other struggles with. And the worst aspect he can face off against are a Fairy type that does do heavy damage on all of these mons, and he got Salazzle, which basically negate anything of that. It doesn't have a real weakness, this team. One could argue the pivot options are there, something like a Volt Switch will always be troublesome, but Mamoswine covers so much naturally. It is one of the key wall breakers in any draft, and having this in a team structured as this is phenomenal. And one thing I really want to see that we probably don't gonna see are Dusclops running Trick Room together with Curse Registeel with Pypress. I think that's gonna be just something, a whole other story to before to be dealing with. But just overall, like, there aren't like big issues here. I think if I had to say something, it's not the best team for fighting. While Lele is gonna cover some of it, it's not gonna cover all of it. But while the team is weak to priority mag punches due to psychic terrain, there are a small not to worry aspect about this team that just makes it for me very, very complete. I would very much hate to face off against a team like this because there are so many small synergies that works well with one another, and I feel that all mons here are accounted for. They are needed for a reason. They are not drafted out of necessity. They are drafted because they're needed for the team, and the team looks great for it. So Absolute, I think you're absolutely going to kill it in this league. But at the number one, and the reason this bloody guy wins and the Charlotte Clovenites is because fuck, this team is good. This is something I'll hate to fend off against. So what are the flaws? Well, while not many, I do want to say that Ribombee for me is not the strongest fairy type. The team is follows. I probably should mention that first. Zapdos, Rodent Wash, Ribombee, Incineroar, Miltank, Lilligant, Jirachi, Mudstill, Dragolgy, and Frostlass. So first and foremost, the team as a whole, much like the other team, I don't see anything drafted on necessity. They are accounted for, there are synergies worked here. Lilligant probably stands out and not the strongest grass type, but consider this. Healing Wish and just Quiver Dance aren't really that many responses to that, and it actually solves this quite nicely, and it can actually very, very passively help the team as a whole. So, Zapdos, a Galarian form. What can I say about that, man? Well, if you have a team that is born with something like Stealth Rocks, and you got 2-3 Stealth Rockers in Miltank, Mudstail, and Jirachi, and you got Ribombee to be able to set up Sticky Web, you're always going to force a team to run Defog. And with competitive, Zapdos becomes one of the strongest Pokemon there is, combined with Agility or Bulk Up. Everything just gets nasty fast. It is just it. Rodent Wash covers the worst this team has to going up against. And even if one could consider, well, the team is maybe a bit fighting weak, trust me when I say this, there are very few fighting types that want to deal head-on with Ribombee, or deal head-on with Dragolgy, or deal head-on even with Mudstail. Frostlass is just one of those mons always stands out because it can now run 2 sets. It can have a Sacker as a suicide lead, or it can run a Choice Banded set that actually breaks few teams apart because of its stamina combination. Mudstail is one of the best defensive ground type there is in the draft format because of stamina and because it has offensive stats to be able to go defensive or offensive or even assault vest, and that is very scary. Dragolgy got Pivot, and it just breaks team apart if you don't have switching for it, and if you do, you're flip turning, and all of a sudden you lost all momentum for the switch-ins you got, and you'll be forced out again. Jirachi is always annoying, and Incineroar has Potting Shot, which does allow some of these Pokemon to actually set up freely. So overall, the thing I said is basically there are no real flaws of this team, but I wanted to focus on the thing I think is bad with the team. It's not a big thing, but it's a thing that I just kept in mind as when I leveled in between the top 3 teams. It was basically whether or not Ribombee was the reason it shouldn't be number 1. The other team was basically that it was a bit on the slower side to not be able to really pressure. The thing is here, it's negated its slow aspects, which isn't necessarily all that slow, but it negated those by Sticky Web. But Ribombee is not a very good fairy type. It is a decent one because allow the majority of these Pokemon to work well if Sticky Web is implemented where it should. And a team with Sticky Web and a Galarian Zapdos, in my book, is always scary. Same with Dragolgy. If you can't punish your switch-ins with a Choice Specs Dragon and you can't outspeed because of Sticky Web, well, they become a lot more troublesome than it. But yeah, the flaws of this team is Ribombee and not being necessarily all that speedy. But with Sticky Web, it just pushed a bit above the first place or the second place. But overall, if I had to say it, for me, the top 5, or in theory 6, I mentioned now with the Sun team that I want to really push forward, that I probably should have ranked a bit higher, Sadian's team. But overall, I think these are scary mons before to be dealing with. But overall, these are just, I'll be honest, a rough estimate of what I think is going to be happening. These are the strongest draft in my book, and the worst draft is, of course, I'm going to mention you again because, like I said, there are so many good things about Hagbone's teams. What happened? gets ridiculous. No. But like I said, the worst team here is not necessarily all that much worse than the best team. It's, like I said, it's always based on the 6 months brought. But if you can predict what's going to be brought, then you are going up against a tougher opponent. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope to do a one more power rankings when the playoff is starting off. So I hope to see you guys then. This became way longer than I wanted to. And we're only gone for 1 hour. Jesus Christ. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. And I really want to wish you guys all the luck in this season. And yeah, take care everyone.